some of you, for some of you, this is your first time getting a chance to actually see me in person. You just see me online. So this is your first time seeing my face. So I'm Dr. Lamphere. I'm your instructor for all these different classes for environmental justice, intro to criminal justice, CJ writing and rhetoric, ethics. You could be here from Dr. Pomikaz's classes. There are a lot of different reasons why you might be here right now. But I do thank you for taking time on your Tuesday night to come and join us for this chat. So with us tonight is Dr. Paul Smykowski. I've known Dr. Smykowski now for the better part of a decade, and he is the director of the North Carolina Youth Violence Prevention Center. He does a lot of really cool work in North Carolina, but specifically in Robeson County in North Carolina. I first got involved with Dr. Smykowski through the Teen Court program, and that's something that's still available in Lumberton and something that you could maybe get involved with if you're around the area. But Dr. Smykowski tonight is going to talk to us about youth violence and some other areas related to that. And then at the end, he'll have some time if you have any questions or comments, or if you want to chat with him. He's always good about sharing his contact information and all that good stuff. So with that being said, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Smykowski for him to give us our presentation.
Great. Thank you so much, Renee. And I appreciate all of you joining us this evening, as well as Renee, you're inviting me to do this talk. I'm on a mission. I do see folks who are coming in, so that's good. I am on a mission to increase awareness about early childhood and adolescent mental health, and especially the role that trauma and adverse childhood experiences can play at the foundation of a cycle of violence that goes across the lifespan. So I was a professor at UNC Chapel Hill for about 16, 17 years. And now, as Renee mentioned, I'm with the North Carolina Youth Violence Prevention Center, which does a number of different programs in the community that I'll mention a little bit about. And I've been studying youth mental health for about, I'd say about 25 years. So with that, you're going to see some examples, and you'll see sort of bringing together a model of the cycle of violence across the lifespan. I know Renee is a victimologist, and so I share that passion for helping victims of crime and violence, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about that work. I do have, this is my contact information if any of you would like to follow up afterwards. It's my name, paul.smykowski@ncyvpc.org. Also, there's a lot of information on my website, which is called the Beyond Bullying Initiative. And if you do gobeyondbullying.com, there's a lot of resources that, that you can access there. Okay, I'd like to thank the sponsors. This is coming from a grant, which is from the Bureau of Justice Assistance, and that allows me to talk to a lot of different groups about the importance of adverse childhood experiences and trauma. Tonight, what we're going to focus on is how to identify childhood stress and the symptoms of traumatic stress. What are the impacts of a traumatic event? And how do you assist youth who are experiencing difficult situations? How can you help them adjust afterwards? So what are adverse childhood experiences? A lot of times we think about childhood as a joyful time, a time with, few responsibilities, and adverse childhood experiences are kind of the opposite of that. It's the stressors that can really put a lot of challenge into our youth's life. So those categories that have been identified are emotional, physical, and sexual abuse, emotional and physical neglect. So those two categories are the Department of Social Services, DSS, and child maltreatment. Then you have bullying victimization, which I'll talk about more this evening. It's really a traumatic stressor for many youth, and it happens, this is the most common of these at ACEs. Then we have a category that is really around parents, parent substance use, parent mental illness, divorce, incarceration of a parent, and witnessing domestic violence are all traumatic stressors for many youth. Also, community violence and poverty. Now, we're situated in Robson County, and we have mental health services for youth who are victims of different types of traumatic stressors. So we do see many youth who have had abuse and neglect, many who have been sexually abused, many victims of bullying across the school district. So these experiences are quite common. 1 in 4 youth might experience economic hardship in their families, for example. Now in Robson County, the youth poverty rate is about 42%. So that's a very high level of youth experiencing economic hardship. About 20% of youth have experienced their parents going through a divorce, and 1 in 10 have experienced parent alcoholism, exposure to violence, or family-related mental illness. Now, if you think about ACEs, they kind of cluster into 3 categories, and this is a nice graphic that captures that. One is childhood troubles through family issues. So that I've just mentioned: divorce, incarceration, parent mental illness, all those things. And then number 2, the second category is community related stressors. So that can be poverty, it can be high levels of violence, and it can be gang activity. So all of those can be stressors from the community. And then they added another category, which is climate related stressors. And climate in Robson County, for example, there's been 2 major floods in the last, 6 years. So losing your home after a flood, for example, is a major climate stressor. Out west, it might be wildfires, or so these are related to the environment. So here's some data. Those of you who might be from an environmental justice class, for example, property crime in Robson County is the red line that you see, and I'm taking you all the way back to 2000. So property crime in Robson County has been elevated for the last 20 years at least. The yellow line that you see is North Carolina as a whole, the average. So the youth in Robson County are experiencing much more of an environment where property crime happens. Now that's burglaries, that's arson, that can be assaults that due to theft. Okay, and here's an example. In the school district, we would have poster contests, and we'd ask youth to draw experiences in their community. And this 8th grader drew her experience having to handle a home burglary as it was happening. So there she is in the background with her telephone, calling the police, trying to handle burglary that's happening. So that's how a property crime can actually have a traumatic effect on a youth. So let's switch now. We also have violent crime. These are assaults, these are larcenies, these are homicides even. And so violent crime has also been elevated in Robson County. You can see again, the yellow line is North Carolina, and Scotland County is green. Richmond County, for comparison, is the purple. So these, I keep track of these rates because we try and see if our programs are helping to decrease rates of violence, rates of property crime. So here's an example of a property crime that could easily cross over into a violent crime if there was anyone in the house. This seventh grader says, in my neighborhood, people burn down houses for no reason. It's scary to know that I live in a neighborhood where these crimes take place. Now, this is true. It turns out that retaliatory crimes such as arson are often connected to gang involvement in Robson County. And so this might be a retaliation for some other shooting or some other, it may even be a gang initiation where in order to get into the gang, you have to either shoot someone or do some other type of property crime. Here's one more example of community effects on youth. And this eighth grader says, due to unsafe things, parks aren't open in my community, houses are boarded up, and she is trying to draw the influences of gang members within her neighborhood. Okay. So now these adverse childhood experiences that I'm trying to give you some illustrations of, they accumulate. And the more there are of these challenges, the harder it is for a youth to actually kind of meet the milestones that we expect, doing well in school, making friends, even growing. In their development is impacted. So what this shows is that the more adverse childhood experiences, the worse the behavior, or the more problems there are in behavior. It's harder to focus. It's that you have more externalizing behavior, that's aggression. Lower levels of school engagement, it's harder to calm down and focus. And so kids have more trouble learning because they're so distracted. And that can end up with more grade retention. Okay. So the take-home point, this is question 1 on Dr. Lanfear's quiz for next time. The more adverse childhood experiences a youth experiences, the worse impact there is on their health, on their behavior, and on their functioning. And so the question is why? Why would that correlation be? And really the best answer to that is traumatic stress. The adverse experiences cause a cascade of traumatic stress in the body, which often over time doesn't shut down because it's not always one event. It's a kind of a continuous amount of stress. And the body has a lot of trouble then managing all of that. Okay, what kinds of events cause trauma? Well, it can be abuse or violence. It can be a car accident. It could be having a parent or the youth have to be in prison or jail or a youth development center. It can be a natural disaster. So these are events that can cause traumatic stress, being robbed, seeing someone else hurt or shot, and seeing a loved one under stress. For example, we see in our mental health treatment, youth who have experienced domestic violence, who have witnessed domestic violence with their parents. So what happens in the aftermath? Sometimes you see youth who cope very effectively, but that's difficult. It's quite a challenge. Many times right after the event, they have a range of emotions that can be fear, guilt, shame. It can be numbness, and they don't want to talk about it. Withdrawing is a major coping mechanism. It doesn't help in the long run because you want social support, but being numb, forgetting pieces of the experience, not being able to talk about it or even kind of remember parts of it, those are all elements of traumatic stress. feelings of vulnerability or helplessness. There might be flashbacks. So some of the common attributes of post-traumatic stress disorder can be there for some youth. Probably about 30% of youth. Many are resilient and cope very well. And some of these emotions can fade over time, but other youth have more of a profound impact from the event. And then therapy, professional help, such as a therapist, can be really useful in that regard. Okay, so I want to show you, I'm going to try and have this video clip. It's not very long, but I'm going to show you a little case that went viral. And you let me know if you can hear this. It's not very long. What I'd like you to do, if you have a piece of paper or something, jot down the mental health pieces that you see from what I'm about to show you. Okay, so I'm stopping sharing that and I'm going to share something else. After the Parkland shooting in Florida, which we'll talk a little bit about school shootings in a little while, but I want you to show you this because their policy changed where they had many more school resource officers. And in criminology, you may some of you may go on to be a school resource officer. So I'd like to show you this case, and I'd like you to think about the mental health consequences of this. This is a 6-year-old, a kindergartner, who is being arrested when she had a very bad day.
What? How much water does this need?
Let's see.
Come with us now.
Okay. So you should do 5 to 6 servings. So you would follow this line right here. It says rice, how many cups? Water, how many cups? It tells you how to do it.
Elementary school.
So this line right here.
2019. The school said Kaya had started hitting the school's assistant principal and screaming after being told that she couldn't wear her sunglasses in the classroom. Her family say that Kaya was experiencing side effects of sleep apnea, a diagnosis they'd shared with the school. But the first grader ended up being taken to the principal's office and later charged with misdemeanor battery, a criminal offense.
I don't want to. Appreciate it.
At the time of Kaya's arrest, Florida had no minimum age laws, leaving children of all ages eligible for arrest by law enforcement officers at school.
Kaya, as a 6-year-old, was arrested. She was handcuffed behind her back, and the only reason that she was handcuffed with zip ties is because the officer said that he didn't have handcuffs small enough to fit her wrist. Kaya was so short, he had to go and find a footstool for her to stand upon so that she would be at the appropriate height level for him to take her mug shot.
I was really scared and confused. I was like, what? Why are those police officers for me?
The number of reported law enforcement in Florida schools nearly doubled the year before Kaya's arrest.
Oh no, you want to touch? Don't give me a...
We shouldn't be putting handcuffs on 6-year-olds. There's almost no situation in which that is an appropriate response.
Experts say rising numbers of school arrests in the state can be significantly attributed to a piece of legislation passed in the wake of the Parkland school shooting, the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School Public Safety Act.
The act actually requires that all public schools in the state, which should include both traditional and charter schools, have an armed individual on campus at all times. Could be a sworn law enforcement officer implemented as a school resource officer. It could be a private security guard who's also armed, but is not a sworn law enforcement officer and doesn't have arrest powers, or it could be implemented through what we call the Guardian program in Florida, which is arming a school staff member. So school resource officers in some ways are part of a bigger trend towards target hardening and trying to protect schools.
Florida school arrests fell statewide during the first year of the pandemic, but now Floridians are heading back to in-person classrooms. According to the ACLU, in 2018, Florida classrooms had more police officers than nurses and more than double the number of police officers than social workers or school psychologists. Kaya Roll's family want the public to understand that the trauma of arrests leave lasting mental scars on kids, ones Kaya is still living with 2 years later.
Before the incident, Kaya was an awesome young lady.
Yeah, do you see more?
She wanted to hug everybody. She wanted to sing for everybody. She wanted to dance for everybody. That was awesome.
Yeah.
As a result of the incident, Kaya has been diagnosed with PTSD, with severe separation anxiety. She almost has a solitary lifestyle now. She's become a totally different child.
I feel sad about what happened at school with the police officer because I was really mean to destruction.
Kaya's case made national news. After an investigation, the Orlando Police Department fired the school resource officer who arrested her, saying that the arrest of any person under the age of 12 requires approval, and that this approval was not obtained in Kaya's case. The family says her charges were dropped.
Outside.
Okay. It's okay.
Hello.
Now,
The Roll family then worked with their state senator to raise the minimum age that a child can be arrested in Florida. The Kaya Roll Act took effect on July 1st, 2021. It states that any Florida child under the age of 7 will not be arrested, charged, or adjudicated, except in the cases of forcible felony.
it took a lot out of me to fight. And I fought really hard because I did not want to see this happen to another family. That does not stop our fight. She turned 8, and this was in May, and she said to me, she says, Grandma, that means that my own law no longer protects me.
The Roll family want the minimum age of arrest in Florida to be raised again, and they also want the state to look into the role of SROs as a whole.
What we need to do is have serious conversations about whether they should be present in schools at all. Then we need to couple that with rigorous looks at the way in which we train them, the ways in which we try to minimize their bias when it comes to dealing with students of color, to ensure that if they are going to be present, that we minimize unintended negative consequences.
Well, for Kaya, the future is a long road. You can learn to live with it. You can learn to regain semblance of normalcy, but there's no such thing as curing PTSD.
Okay. Okay, I want, there's a whole lot in there. There's a lot of controversies in there. After school shootings, politicians want to respond, but often we don't restrict gun laws. And what we do is we add resources for schools to become safer, like school resource officers. I show this to you to have you start thinking about the mental health consequences of you could see the context that Kaya, as a 6-year-old, is working with in her kindergarten class. So, you know, one of the striking things when I saw this was really about how her change in behavior, her change in personality, and that is really a common trait of the traumatic stress. Now, one thing that the mother said, I don't think she's a psychologist, but many, with treatment, much of this PTSD can be remediated. The PTSD is often around avoiding triggers that remind the person of the stressor, and nightmares, the anxiety, the sometimes the shame or humiliation of the event. All of that can be worked through in therapy, and we have caseload of youth from Robson County who we work with, who have had different types of these ACEs that are working through their experiences. It's a challenge. However, it definitely, with time and support, it can be handled. So let's go back to here. That I wanted to show you a traumatic stressor in action. And we can talk about any reactions that you have at the end, but for time, I'm going to add some more material, because the most common traumatic stressor in childhood is at its height in 6th grade, and that's youth bullying. So if you have a niece or a nephew, or if you have children of your own, it's about half and half whether or not they have been able to been a victim of bullying. In middle school, about 50% of kids report that they have been bullied. Bullying is repeated aggressive behavior from someone where there is a power difference. So one kid might be bigger than the other one, or have more friends, or have more resources, might be wealthier, all of these types of things. And it can happen verbal, it can be physical, it can be social, and much of it is about exclusion, excluding kids from relationships, from resources, kind of keeping them on the outs or on the periphery. And so you do see victims who are sitting alone in the cafeteria because they just are not able to access friends. And many times this is with a youth who comes into the experience as with a vulnerability. And I'll tell you a little bit about that in a minute. But here's a poster, and actually this situation, at least there's some positives here if you pick them out. This, the female with the green shirt is a positive bystander trying to help out. You can see the amount of traumatic stress right here with the victim's face, with it, where he's crying and having a very stress reaction there. So many times youth tell us that teachers, even if they tell them and they're there, they don't do very much. This type of bullying can happen once every 7 minutes in a middle school. So teachers kind of have to choose their battles, if you will. There's a lot of this behavior, and they often, I think, feel overwhelmed trying to deal with it. Here's another example. In this poster, the youth wrote, "Bullying hurts." And that is exactly right, even from a biological perspective. So a traumatic stressor like Kaya in being handcuffed and taken to the police station, or in this case, having a black eye there, and it looks like a bloody nose, and being laughed at by the bully in the background. That hurts, not just physically, but through the brain actually processes pain with the same circuits as physical and social pain are processed in the same circuits in the brain. So what that means is, if all of you decided you'd you'd unmute and you'd start laughing at me because this is such a terrible presentation and I was humiliated, my brain would process that in the same way as if you punched me in the gut. Okay, and that's important because youth will come home, they'll have a bad day, they'll say that, so-and-so who used to be a best friend is teasing them. And that is really the beginning of some of the traumatic stress that can really build over time. So what's happening in the youth's body is all of these stress hormones are flooding their system. And this is very difficult to handle. It's the same in an adult. Adrenaline, cortisol are these fight, flight, or freeze, right? And so victims of bullying, for example, have they are trying to get away, just like if a tiger was chasing them on the savannah in Africa, except they can't get away because they are in school and often unable to escape the bullying. So bullying is a traumatic stressor, and here's some facts from the National Childhood Traumatic Stress Network. And the really key part here is how it's connected to other pieces of youth, other ACEs. So for example, children who have been victims of trauma, other ACEs like abuse and neglect, are often more likely to both be bullies, the bully, and to be victims of bullying. So it really pushes them further into more traumatic events. And then, just like you saw in the little video, bullying can also lead to PTSD or post-traumatic stress. And about 30% of kids who have been bullied have a traumatic stress reaction to their experience. And here's that just in a chart. So 27% of students who have been bullied feel bad about themselves afterwards. So it lowers their self-esteem. And in adolescence, that self-esteem is so important to be able to plow through the day, make friends, study for tests, all these things that we expect of our youth. When their self-esteem is lower, they end up getting sick more. They end up trying to not go to school because they don't feel well. You might have stomach aches, headaches, other types of even nightmares from the bullying experience. So for time, I'm going to skip. I have some videos that, well, let's see. We'll come back to Keaton Jones. That is another video that went viral where it's rare to see the reaction of a youth who's been bullied right afterwards. It's rare because they often want to hide and not tell anyone. In this case of Keaton Jones, his mother actually videotaped him in the car as they were talking about it, and then she posted it to social media, and that went viral. So this is an example. Let me just, I don't think this one is very long at all. So let me try and show you this, because you'll see a youth really trying to grapple with his experience. Okay, make sure it's here. Okay.
Just out of curiosity, why do they bully? What's the point of it? Why do you find joy in taking innocent people and finding a way to be mean to them? It's not okay.
What do they say to you?
They make fun of my nose. They call me ugly. They say I have no friends.
What'd they do to you at lunch?
Put milk on me and put a hand down my clothes. They're right at me.
Is it just you?
Yep.
Or is it other kids too that feel that way?
Say it's other kids too.
How's that make you feel?
I don't like that they do it to me, and I for sure don't like that they do it to other people, because it's not okay. People that are different don't need to be criticized about it. And it's not their fault. But if you are made fun of, just don't let it bother you. Just stay strong, I guess. It's hard. But I'll probably get better one day.
Okay, so that's an example of, whoops, hold on one second. Sorry about that. I have to stop that. Sorry.
Hello, I'm Jason Bateman.
Okay, I'm sorry about that. So with Keaton-Jones, I show you that as an example because of the intensity of the emotion. You can really tell in his experience. Imagine trying to eat your lunch, and it's hard enough not to have friends, but then to have others come to put ham down your shirt and throw bread at you from a distance. And this, one of the major pieces of this bullying experience that I want to highlight is that it is a social experience. It's humiliating for the youth, and that is what undermines their self-esteem. It's what makes them remember the experience so intensely. So this is an example of a poster from a youth in Robson County, and you can see his backpack is being taken by the bully, and this shows the entire dynamic of a traumatic bullying experience. The bully has negative helpers who are trying to add on to it. The teacher who's there doesn't say anything, and all these other classmates who he has to go back and see the next day are laughing and adding into the humiliation of the experience. So in this picture, you see a youth who's very vulnerable right there, but his mental health afterwards is even more fragile as he tries to cope with this experience. And that's where I have in my mental health caseload of clients, people who remember their bullying experiences from 10 or 20 years ago, and they'll still reference it and be trying to work through some of the feelings that they have, because the body remembers these during such an intense emotional period that it goes right into memory, long-term memory. So this is some of the profound impact that that these experiences have. Now, what are the consequences? We see reduced academic performance, more depression, anxiety, humiliation, sensitivity to being rejected by others, suicidal behavior. I've had a number of referrals this year where we've had to respond to youth who had been recently bullied in the Robson schools and then were suicidal, threatening to hurt themselves. As adults, victims of bullying can have intimacy problems, they can have trouble making friends, and they can become more violent. The last bullet that you see, being depressed afterwards, can average up to about 6.9, almost 7 years. And being aggressive and more violent can last an average of 6 years. So that means if you're bullied in middle school, you're still depressed, possibly anxious, possibly aggressive, all the way through most high school, and sometimes into the undergraduate years if they choose to go to college. So also with the Keaton-Jones video, you can see, why do youth get singled out to be bullied? When we ask that question in our research, about 26% say it's something about their appearance, like Keaton-Jones said, his nose or his lisp, how he speaks. 14% say it's about their weight, and that can be overweight or it can be underweight. That's the thing. It depends on what the bully wants to pick out. Something about their race or ethnicity, about 17% of kids say that. whether you do well in school or you do poorly in school, either way, you can be singled out for bullying. You can be of a different religion or gender can be feed into this, especially sexual orientation or LGBTQ youth who are questioning their sexuality. That can feed into being targeted for bullying. Youth with a disability or special needs can also be targeted as a victim of bullying. This is a quote from a youth who had been bullied, and it really underscores all those things that I just said about research. But this, you hear it from the youth. I'm a victim of bullies. I'm too tall, too big, have phantom smells. I'm different. I look wrong. I'm not to be talked to, only about. Now, I won't read it all, but something that's very, I think, powerful in this is bullying is an equal opportunity ostracizer. It doesn't care about your race, religion, your wealth. Bullies thrive on the pain that they inflict. And down here, it's to this youth, it's like continuous torture that sticks in a person like thousands of porcupine quills. Now that's very graphic, and I apologize for, but at the same time, it really shows how deeply wounded the youth is by the experience that they've had. Now, the more bullying, this is my own research that I've done over the years, the more bullying, victimization, the higher level of the youth's anxiety, depression, and aggressive behavior. So it's coming out, that pain is coming out in different ways. Now, this is a picture of survivors of the Parkland, Florida high school shooting. All of these youth who are pictured had been shot. And here's a quote from the shooter, Nicholas Cruz, who said, "Today my massacre shall begin. All the kids in school will run in fear and hide. From the wrath of my power, they will know who I am." So this is one really negative consequences that some youth are so profoundly traumatized by their experiences that they end up wanting revenge on everyone or anyone. And that's the recipe for school shootings. So the FBI has done research on school shootings across the last 30 years, before Columbine and everything since. And they found only 3 attributes that connect school shooters. Suicidal ideation, but before they commit suicide, they want to become famous. And there's a template from that on the internet to follow the Columbine model. So they have a desire for attention or fame. And out of these 3, the most common attribute is that these school shooters had some type of perceived victimization. It might have been child maltreatment by a parent, it might have been some other type of abuse, and it often is bullying victimization. Here you can see our juvenile justice statistics versus the general population. So if you look under juvenile justice there, 70% of youth who are in the juvenile justice system have a mental disorder of some type versus 20% in the general population. 46% have some type of substance use problem compared to 8% in the general population. And look, 90% of youth in the juvenile justice system have some type of traumatic event in their past versus 25% in the general population. So what's happening is youth who have experienced trauma are getting off the rails and ending up in our juvenile justice system instead of in mental health treatment in many cases. So I want to put this in context. There are a number of different types of violence across the lifespan, right? And in childhood, the two main ones are child maltreatment, being abused or neglected by a parent. And that fits within the bullying paradigm, but because parents are more powerful, adults in general, and are more powerful than youth. So that is bullying by an adult to a youth. So youth often then take that behavior that they see and they do it with a sibling. So here you have an older sibling bullying a younger sibling, and 30% of youth report that they've been bullied by their siblings. Now then you move out of the home into the school setting, and you have 35% of youth who report being bullied at school. And so sometimes if they've been a victim of maltreatment in the home, then they turn and become a bully. But that also puts them at risk for being bullied by others. It goes both ways. In the adolescent years, you have about 32% saying that they've experienced bullying by a dating partner. So teen dating violence. And cyberbullying is in this mix because that is online with social media. There's so much attention to that, and it can go viral and get out of control. In all of these experiences with my clients who have been bullied, that is their biggest fear, because they will tell me once it goes online, you have no control of it at all afterwards. So, and it keeps going. You never know who ends up with, those social media messages or pictures that have been forwarded. Bullying in groups. So for example, there's hazing, which also is under the bullying and violence. It's really violence between group members where they're initiating new recruits. And this happens in the military, but it also happens in choir. It happens in youth football leagues or baseball, all sorts of athletics. And so it starts really in 6th grade, just like school bullying. You go out for a sports team and you end up, having some hazing experiences. In adulthood, we have intimate partner violence and workplace bullying, usually by a supervisor who is not, treating others in a respectful way. And then with older adults, you can have elder abuse, which also often comes back to the home setting where it's someone that they know. It may be a child who is in some ways neglecting or abusing the older adult. Could be, often it's financially. Okay, so that's how these all kind of come together, and you see the same type of reactions with perpetrators. They have higher anxiety, higher levels of aggression, more justice system involvement, and more suicidality, more substance use. And on the victim side, you have more depression, more humiliation, PTSD, like we've talked about, anxiety. You also have more symptoms, somatic symptoms, that's headaches, stomach aches. You have more substance use, more violence, and more suicidality. So both sides of this teeter-totter, there's really the same types of negative consequences. Just for time, this is how ACEs end up in adulthood, causing significant problems. So you have an adverse experience. It can lead to disrupted development in the child's brain. That can also change the social, emotional functioning of the child. And that can lead to health risk behaviors like smoking, drinking, to cope with their stress. And that in adulthood can transfer into more alcoholism, more drug use, more depression and suicide, more smoking. So these are the symptoms that you might see in a youth who might be looking for help Might be a relative of yours, might be someone that you meet in an internship or what have you. But you often have youth who are more irritable, angry, have attention problems. They might have higher levels of anxiety or fear. They might be trying to avoid school or avoid certain situations, going to the gym. They might feel some shame or humiliation, have trouble sleeping, be depressed, have headaches or stomach aches. Those are the signs. So what I try and do in these talks is also give you a few tools that might help. If you know a youth that has had traumatic stress, what you might do is provide space for them to talk. They're often looking for an outlet, but they really need safety. They really need to be able to trust that you're not going to say, and what did you do? What did you do to stoke the bully on? How often have you heard that? So many times we end up blaming the victim for their experiences. And it's really tragic in terms of some of these ACEs, like sexual assault. What did you do to bring it on yourself? These are terrible ways that people who sometimes are trying to help, but end up not helping a youth. So what you want to do is give them the room here. This is a little acronym you could remember, ALGE. Approach them or let them approach you. Listen without being judgmental. Give reassurance that the bully was wrong, that those messages that they heard were not right, that they're a lovable person. Encourage them to seek professional help or see the school social worker or counselor if they can. Encourage them also, more likely, that they're trying to work through it on their own using natural coping mechanisms like exercise, or some youth love music. And find what they enjoy, and that can be therapeutic, even if it's taking a walk in nature, going to the beach. So these are some things that are healing and are completely free, no expense here at all. Social support, being with another person who will accept the individual, having at least one friend, trying to get enough exercise so your body can work out some of that stress. Creative activities are often very useful. Such as we do art groups, we do drama groups to try and help youth get engaged and have them involved in working through some of their experiences. Some youth might benefit from professional counseling or therapy, and getting enough sleep is nature's way of working through an experience that that the brain is just trying to process. Yeah, this is just examples of some of the activities that we do in our center. We do provide free mental health treatment for youth who have had ACEs and trauma. We provide trauma-focused cognitive behavioral therapy. We also provide expressive arts for youth who are under stress. It's very relaxing. We bring them together to paint. We also do drama. These types of things can be a creative outlet. Here's some examples of youth who came together and did our painting groups online. They're showing the paintings that they're proud of, and they were able to connect with other youth while they were painting and enjoying the experience. So I think this is about the last thing that I will leave you with, and then we'll take a few questions. If a youth who has had a traumatic experience or who has been bullied, if they open up to you, how can you help? Again, listen. That's all you have to do, is be there. You don't have to have anything magical to say that'll make it better. You just have to be there, because even trying to talk with another person about it is healthy, because the typical response is to hide, to withdraw, and you don't want the youth to do that. That's the worst thing that they can do. Be empathic and validate their feelings. Let them know they didn't deserve to be treated that way, that they're a valuable person. Express your support, but that does not mean run, if it's a child of yours, many parents like run right to the principal, we're going to fix this. And then the youth will say over and over, oh, you made it worse. And it's because this is a a group problem at the teenage level. If a parent gets involved, it can be even more humiliating for the victim. And finally, ask the victim what you might be able to do that would make it better. It might be taking them to an outing so they can get away for an afternoon. There's a lot of different things that you might be able to do that could switch, sort of take their thoughts and feelings away from thinking about the situation. So if you would like, we do have volunteer opportunities at our center. Renee had mentioned Teen Court, that's one. We also have Victim Services that does the creative activities. It does youth mentoring. So this is the information for if you would like to contact us. The director of the program's name is Martika Bacayao. This is spelled wrong. Her email is actually martika.bacayao with 2 L's at NC-YVPC.org. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and we're coming up to our time. So I'm going to open it up if there's a few questions.
Are there any questions for Dr. Snikowski? Comments?
Yes. Dr. Snikowski, do you experience any of the like special needs fitting in the same category? Because I know a lot of times it's mostly the youth that are normal. But what about the ones that's on the scale?
Yes, it's a great question. Absolutely. And special needs youth are definitely at higher risk for being bullied, because sometimes what the bully is doing is trying to point out what's making them different and then exclude them. So for example, I'm very nearsighted, and my bullies in the 6th grade would point out, oh, he's blind. And so that's very common. Youth in a wheelchair, or youth with special needs where they have like dyslexia, where they have trouble reading. So all of these things a bully can pick up on and use to exclude the youth. So about 10% of youth with disabilities tell us that the bully picked on them because of the disability. Many times youth will pick on some appearance, piece, you're too tall, you're too short, you're too, big, you're too small. And it can be any attribute. For Keaton Jones, it was his nose. It can be any attribute that makes you kind of stick out or different. And then the bully really emphasizes that. And because a special needs youth might be sensitive about the situation. I was sensitive about being very nearsighted. So the bullying hurt my feelings even more, because it was right in an area of my vulnerability. I was sensitive to it. I hope, Keith, did that answer your question?
Yes, sir, it did.
Okay, thank you for the question. That's really important, because many special needs youth could use even extra support. Thank you. Other questions or comments?
What made you choose to study at Chapel Hill? Because I'm actually from Chapel Hill. So what made you become a professor at Chapel Hill?
Oh, yeah, thank you. So I was finishing work studying in Minnesota, where they have a very good child development program. And what drew me to Chapel Hill was that they had a researcher in social work who studied resilience. And so resilience is how people bounce back after stress. So, and I was really interested, you can see in my talk that all of this trauma, the other side of it is how do kids bounce back? How do kids overcome the stress? So I came to Chapel Hill in order to have mentoring from the main person in social work who was studying resilience, his name was Mark Fraser. He wrote a book that was a bestseller on resilience and youth, and he retired now, but I was able to work with him for about 12 years, and that was wonderful for my career. Thank you for that question. Did that answer it?
Yeah, that answered my question. I was just curious because I live in Chapel Hill. I lived there for about 9 years. So I was just curious about it.
Yeah, absolutely. I really came, and it was a wonderful place, actually. I have 2 children of my own, and we were able to raise our children in Chapel Hill, and that was a nice place to have the family.
Yeah,
Then
nice place to live.
yes, it is. And then we started work in Robson County and commuted over here, about 2-hour drive, but I've been doing that ever since. Thank you. Other questions or comments? I know, Renee, that I'm running a bit over, and I apologize to all of you.
No, it's totally fine. Does anyone have anything else for Dr. Smikowski?
Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry, just Keith again. One more question. When you counsel the youth who has been bullied, do you also include the parents in that as a form of reinforcement, or to help teach them how to do the steps, or how do you go about it?
Yes, that's a great question, Keith. Thank you for bringing that up. In as much as we can, yes, we include the parent. If the youth, and the reason that we do that is many times the parent is a critical part of the support that the youth needs in order to move on from their traumatic experience. So part of the treatment can be creating a narrative, or sometimes youth want to write a rap song, or they want to draw a picture to help them process what they went through, and then we'll have them present that to their parent. And we work with the parent behind the scenes to be able to be supportive and allow the youth to talk about both their experience and all the emotions that they had. Now, to be honest with you, we see a lot of youth in Robson County who have been sexually assaulted. These tend to be 8 to 12-year-old females, and it is tragic. And one thing is they go to their families, and sometimes this is so difficult for the family to deal with that they just want to move on. And so what we try and do is help them talk about it, help them put the time into being with each other and processing the experience. Because if it's just moved on, so many families have said, "Oh, that was last month. We're done with that." But guess what? It comes back up. Their bodies remember, their mind remembers, and then something else happens that triggers all of those memories and emotions. So to get back to the answer, Keith, it's a great question. we try and work with the parent and the youth as much as we can. Sometimes parents are not available and you can work with the youth alone, but the best is to integrate both.
Thank you.
Yeah, appreciate the question.
Anything else for Dr. Smikowski?
I would love to know if there are programs that address some of this in the schools, and if your organization is offering those kind of things, like videos for the kids to watch or presentations or something like that.
Yes, I've been trying. In fact, this morning I spoke to all of the school counselors. They were having a meeting for the Robeson County schools. So we have a partnership with them, and I've done training like this for several of the high schools. So the answer is yes, we do have some. We have training for staff and teachers and SROs. And we do have youth programs, like I showed you, the paint parties, the drama groups, and mental health treatment. We try and work with the school counselors to refer youth who have been bullied or who have had other types of traumatic stressors for mental health treatment. Short answer, yep. And I wish that I wish we could do it more directly. Robeson County Schools have about 22,000 students. That's a lot to manage. So, and there's a lot of youth that need help. So we do what we can with partnering, but there could be a lot more that we'd like to do. Thank you for the question.
Thank you.
By the way, Renee will have my contact information and these materials. If you know a youth in Robeson County who could benefit from any of the services that you've heard about today, then there will be contact information for me and for the program director. And I'm passionate about trying to get youth the help that they need, especially in a rural area. There are so few providers. When I talk to social workers, and that's my background, there's just so few mental health treatment resources, and a lot of rural families are not able to access them. That's why much of our work we've done on Zoom, especially during the pandemic, but we'll still do it on Zoom because it's much more, it breaks down the geographic barriers to getting youth the help they need.
Well, we'll go ahead and if anybody wants to stay on and has anything they want to talk to Dr. Smikowski about, feel free to stick around. I'm not kicking anybody off, but
Sure.
I want to go ahead and be mindful of everyone's time. So
yeah, absolutely. And I would ask one thing before you leave. I have a poll that I'm going to launch. Usually I ask Renee to ask these questions, but if you would just answer the question, it's anonymous. It helps me to report how effective this type of presentation has been. Okay, so it's going to come up on your screen, and if you would just, it's only 3 questions. And I would just appreciate your feedback before you leave. And again, thank you very much for being with us tonight.
yeah, and I had actually put the 3 questions on Canvas just for everybody to have. So I'll still get that information to you, Paul, just so that you have it.
Okay.
So yeah, so and if you attended tonight, just make sure you go on Canvas and answer the 2 questions and also your race or ethnicity. Put that information in, and then I'll get that information to Dr. Smikowski. And yeah, it was great. I hope that some of you do get in touch with him about volunteering, and there's possible internship opportunities in the future. You should really make the most of it. So if anyone wants to stay on, you can stay on. If not, then you can take off for the night. And I'll see y'all in class this week or talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Yep. Bye. Have a good evening.
You too.
Thank you, Dr. Smikowski. This is an excellent presentation. I have a daughter who's going to be going into middle school very shortly. So all of this was very much hitting home for me. So thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much for your presentation.
Sure. Appreciate your coming.
Yeah, we had a good turnout. I was really happy.
Yeah, that's great. I really enjoy doing this with you and Matt, Renee, and appreciate your letting me come.
Yeah, no problem. I think I don't know if anybody, I think everybody, they just might be lingerers. So, but yeah, if you can send me that recording, Paul, I would appreciate it.
Sure, I will definitely do that. I just and it might be through, you know, like last time, you get a link, or if that's too big, I'll put it on a Google Drive, you know, something like that.
Perfect.
Yeah, very good.
All right. Thanks so much, Paul. Have a good night.
Okay.
Oh, I think Justina.
Yes, I'm happy to answer.
How do we go about interning for the program?
Oh, okay. Yeah, great. We have 2 interns right now, actually, and one from social work, one from counseling. And so what you would do is you could contact me, and I would put you in contact with the coordinator, whose name is Martika Bacayao. She she was a faculty member at UNC Pembroke, and she does internship mentoring. So, and then we would see if it was be her or another member of the team. And we have each semester we've had interns, and I think that they've had really good experiences. And Renee, have we had any from your program?
The teen court has had some interns from my program, but I don't think that we've had anybody outside of the teen court in a while.
Yeah, and Justina, that's an option. We have a teen court that is another creative intervention, keeps kids out of the juvenile justice system. So there's a number of things that you could be connected to. And let me, let's see. What's the best way to let her know the contact information, Renee?
I can send an email right now to the 3 of us.
Yeah, okay, that would be good. Why don't you send her my email, and Justina, I would get you in contact with the agency staff member who coordinates volunteers.
Justina, what are your 3 letters and 3 numbers for your Brave Mail?
JMC 098.
Okay. I'll send that right now.
Great, thank you for your interest. We love to have students get involved, and there's really good ways that help both ways.
Thank you for the opportunity, by the way.
Absolutely.
Thank you for the presentation. It was really helpful.
Oh, good. I'm glad.
Thanks for attending, Justine. I'll see you on Wednesday.
All right.
Yep. Have a good night.
You too.
Okay. Is this Aria? Aria, do you have a question or a comment that you'd like?
No, I think they might have just.
Yeah, they might have just left. Okay, well, again, Renee, I appreciate all this, and it's great working with you. Yeah, hey, and I had put in that application. I hope that we can work on that if it gets funded.
I hope so too. I'm excited about that.
Yeah, I will let you know. I think that we might know by June, but I'll let you know as soon as I do.
Sounds good, Paul.
Okay.
All right.
All right.
Good night.
Yep. Bye.
Bye.